Greed is a quality that is not the most attractive in human character. People who are too greedy usually evoke a negative reaction in society. In addition, their own greed can cause them a lot of problems. Sometimes the behavior of a greedy person is not only unattractive and repulsive to others, but also futile and even harmful to themselves. However, greed is inherent in all people, and it is not accidental. If nature endowed us with qualities that are absolutely unnecessary for humans, it would not have bestowed these qualities upon us. Since greed is inherited by all of us by nature, let's understand why it arises and what its purpose is. Greed itself can be described as a person's desire to appropriate as many goods as possible, both material and immaterial. It can be anything that a person may need. Various things: money, food, pleasures, power, information, attention. If a person is greedy, they want to have everything in unlimited quantity. Greed is also associated with hoarding, unwillingness to share, and a desire to preserve what one already has. Unlike frugality, greed is often senseless when a person saves on their resources, such as money, and it goes against their own interest. Greed can cause many problems if it is not recognized and controlled. Therefore, we must be able to restrain it in order to maintain clarity of thought. To begin with, let's consider the aggressive form of greed, which is one of the qualities along with vanity and ambition. It is an internal drive for individuals to achieve high results. As rational beings, we understand that greed is inherent in us to increase our chances of survival in the world, including by achieving increasingly significant goals. Aggressive individuals who are always unsatisfied undoubtedly achieve success in life more often than those who settle for what they have. Therefore, when evaluating the actions of others, we should always remember that they are primarily determined by natural instincts that compel them to behave in one way or another. This can allow us to better understand what drives a person more: aggression or fear. Aggressive greed manifests itself in an unstoppable desire to satisfy one's desires in obtaining even greater wealth, regardless of what has already been achieved. A person experiencing such a feeling always craves more. At first, a new trough is enough for them, but soon it breaks and they strive to become the master of the sea and so on. Such a person never stops. They never feel contentment. Being aggressively greedy can be both beneficial and harmful. After all, in this world, aggressive and ambitious people always manage to achieve more than those who lead an average life. However, it is important to ensure that aggression is not excessively straightforward, the kind that one has to pay for. The desire for more can be pursued in different ways. One can charge ahead like a tank until they encounter an obstacle, or one can act carefully, bypassing obstacles, and with a greater likelihood of achieving the desired outcome with fewer problems. Thus, aggressive greed makes a person more ambitious and result-oriented, giving them strength and energy. However, it can also cloud judgment and make a person less cautious and pragmatic. Many people have become victims of such greed because they couldn't control themselves. Therefore, of course, we can and should desire more, but it is important to be aware of our abilities and limitations in assessing them, as they are not limitless. Greed driven by fear implies a person's desire to have as much as possible, but with an emphasis on preserving what they already have. Fear prompts a person to hold on to what they have due to uncertainty in their abilities and the fear of losing something they don't actually need. Aggressive greed also stems from fear, as aggression is the flip side of fear. Fear is always the foundation of greed, but it manifests differently. Some fear losing something, while others seek to hide their fear by striving for more. Why do we need more than we need? If a person has little and is barely surviving, their greed can be understood because they are genuinely scared. But if a person has a lot and still can't be content and strives for more, it is perplexing. Overcoming the fear of losing what one has can be achieved by multiplying their existing possessions. But it is also important not to forget about the enjoyment we seek in our lives, as greed contributes to the pleasure of achieving desired goods. While pain and pleasure as driving forces, pain and pleasure are the two main factors that drive us. Greed allows us to avoid pain and experience pleasure, depending on what we desire most at a certain moment in life. Usually, the fear of losing something is stronger than the desire to gain something new. Therefore, most people use greed as a means to overcome fear, striving to preserve what they already have and acquire more. However, greed does not always help improve life. More often than not, it worsens it. This happens because a greed person loses control over their actions. Despite all its drawbacks, greed is a necessary phenomenon, whether it is aggressive or fear-driven. Our lives are always subject to change. They cannot remain constant and unchanged. Greed is one of the stimuli that compel us to change our lives, whether it is out of a desire to hold on to what we have or to gain more. However, despite some benefits that greed may bring, it also has a number of negative consequences. Firstly, excessive greed makes a person selfish and indifferent to the needs of others. They are willing to engage in any manipulations and deceit to achieve their financial gain. Secondly, greed can lead to a loss of trust and respect from others. Such individuals only care about their own interests, disregarding the well-being and happiness of others. This negatively affects their reputation and relationships within the social sphere. Additionally, the constant pursuit of accumulating material possessions can lead to a state of constant dissatisfaction and discontent. There is no limit to greed, and a person will never be satisfied with the achieved result. Thus, greed destroys the joy and peace of the inner world. Finally, the consequences of greed can be both physical and emotional. Constant tension, the struggle for every penny or for the preservation of property leads to exhaustion, and such a state has a negative impact on a person's health and quality of life. Thus, greed has its pros and cons. It can be beneficial if a person uses it to achieve their goals without infringing on the interests of others. However, if greed becomes the primary motive for actions, it leads to negative consequences in life and relationships. It is important to learn to control greed and find a balance between personal interest and the needs of others. In life, greedy people always take their resources and those that do not yet belong to them seriously. They fall into a mild madness, consumed by the feeling of greed, and persistently pursue their goals, striving to preserve what they already have and get even more. Ultimately, greed is the driving force behind progress and improving the standard of living. It should be acknowledged that if we were all a little less greedy, we would probably be less resilient. Greed pushes us to achieve our goals, be persistent, and be willing to fight for what we need. After all, thanks to greed, some people are driven by ambition, others achieve impressive results, and some survive in difficult conditions. As a result, life becomes less predictable, more intense, and interesting. The chance to improve life. To some extent, greed gives everyone a chance to improve their life. On the one hand, a person can take advantage of the greed of others who lose their heads because of it. On the other hand, they can achieve impressive success by striving to have more of what they already have. Therefore, while some people lose everything because of their greed, others gain something new. In the end, life does not stand still. Changes and transformations are constantly happening. It is necessary to be able to recognize that we are all greedy in our own way. It is important for everyone to understand what causes greed, aggression, or fear. If it is aggression, it is necessary to analyze the possible consequences that greed can lead to. It is worth assessing the risks and being prepared for them. The desire to have more should not be rejected. It is only important to learn to control and differentiate between desire and possibility. Wanting more is normal, a natural desire of every healthy person. However, it is important to understand the difference between desire and the actual possibility of fulfilling it. It is unwise to risk for the sake of satisfying greed without properly considering alternative ways to achieve the goal. It may be worth evaluating the most reasonable and acceptable ways to achieve them. By observing one's behavior, it is always possible to find moments of greed and determine the best way to satisfy one's desires. If greed is driven by fear, it is worth paying attention to one's self-esteem and self-confidence levels. Worrying about losing something may indicate doubts about the ability to regain it in the future. Reflecting on what is truly necessary for a fulfilling life and how to obtain it. If you doubt your ability to earn enough money, it is not worth restricting yourself with greed and denying yourself necessary things. There is always an opportunity to earn the necessary money in life. The desire to have more should not be rejected. It is only important to learn to control and differentiate between desire and possibility. Wanting more is normal, a natural desire of every healthy person. However, it is important to understand the difference between desire and the actual possibility of fulfilling it. It is unwise to risk for the sake of satisfying greed without properly considering alternative ways to achieve the goal. It may be worth evaluating the most reasonable and acceptable ways to achieve them. By observing one's behavior, it is always possible to find moments of greed and determine the best way to satisfy one's desires. If greed is driven by fear, it is worth paying attention to one's self-esteem and self-confidence levels. Worrying about losing something may indicate doubts about the ability to regain it in the future. Reflecting on what is truly necessary for a fulfilling life and how to obtain it. If you doubt your ability to earn enough money, It is not worth restricting yourself with greed and denying yourself necessary things. There is always an opportunity to earn the necessary money in life. By denying oneself, one can deprive oneself of what is truly necessary. It is important to understand that resources in life should be used, not hoarded and carefully stored. There is no point in limiting oneself due to greed. It is undeniable that greed is present in every person, as we all fear losing something and strive to gain as much as possible. However, not all of us exhibit open greed. Some people know how to control this feeling, recognizing its influence on their life. They manage their greed or skillfully hide it from others. Meanwhile, others behave like spoiled children, always demanding more and more, or like misers, denying everyone their desires, showing their greed only in a negative light. The main difference lies in how we manage this feeling. I am confident that if we are aware of our greed, we can tame it. Greed can be cunning, but it also motivates us. Getting rid of it is not always easy, so do not let it control you.